Mom said brother's moving into your guest house. I put it on Airbnb for $400 night instead. It wasn't a joke or a petty reaction, not at first. It was a survival instinct. My name is Sarah. I'm 28, and for the last 6 years, every penny I made as a freelance graphic designer went into one single dream, my own tiny patch of earth. I bought a small 2-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it had a dilapidated old garage out back that the previous owner used for storage. To me, that crumbling structure wasn't a garage. It was a gold mine. A future guest house. My mom said my brother was moving into my guest house, but I turned it into a $400 night Airbnb instead. It was survival. I built that studio myself, learning from YouTube. Subscribe and like to see how this fight for my space unfolds. I spent a year and every last cent of my savings turning that oil-stained concrete box into a beautiful, cozy little studio. I learned how to lay laminate flooring from YouTube videos. I installed drywall until my arms felt like they'd fall off. I painted the walls a soft sage green and found vintage furniture at flea markets, lovingly restoring each piece. It was my masterpiece, my safety net, my proof that I could build something real and lasting all by myself. It was meant to be a rental, a source of passive income that would finally give me some breathing room. The phone call from my mother, Martha, came on a Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee and admiring the sunlight streaming through the new skylight I'd installed in the guest house. "Hi, honey," she started, her voice a little too sweet. That was always the warning sign. "So I have wonderful news for your brother." I waited. My brother Kyle was 25 and lived his life in a series of wonderful news that usually involved him quitting a job to find himself or moving to a new city with no plan. "He's decided to move back home for a while," Martha announced, as if he were a returning war hero. "And we were thinking, since your little guest house is just sitting there empty, it would be the perfect place for him." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "It's not empty, Mom. I just finished the renovations. I'm getting it ready to rent." "Oh, don't be silly," she laughed, a dismissive little sound. "You can rent it out later. This is family. Kyle needs a stable place for a few months to get on his feet." A few months. I knew my brother. His few months could stretch into years. He was the kind of person who, once comfortable, became a permanent fixture. He'd treat my little sanctuary like his personal dorm room, leaving a trail of dirty clothes and empty pizza boxes. And there was no mention of rent. Of course not. In my family's eyes, what was mine was simply an extension of their resources. "Mom, I can't," I said, my voice firm. "I have a mortgage. I need the income from that rental. I planned my entire budget around it." "Sarah, don't be selfish," she snapped, the sweetness gone. "We've always helped you. That down payment for your car a few years ago, that came from us. Family helps family. You have this perfectly good little house just sitting there. Your brother needs it." The car down payment was $2,000 5 years ago, which I had paid back. This guest house was a $100,000 investment of my own sweat and money. The comparison made my blood boil. As she spoke, I could hear my father's voice in my head. He passed away when I was in college, but his words were etched into my memory. He always said, "Never let anyone treat your hard work like their personal piggy bank." "I'll think about it," I lied just to get her off the phone. "There's nothing to think about," she said. "He's packing his things. He'll be there Friday." She hung up before I could protest. I stood there, phone in my hand, shaking with a mix of anger and panic. They weren't asking. They were telling. They had already decided my future for me. They saw my hard work, my sacrifice, and saw nothing but a convenience for my irresponsible brother. I looked out the window at my beautiful, perfect little guest house, my sanctuary, my future. And I thought of my father's words again. "Never let anyone treat your hard work like their personal piggy bank." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I acted. I grabbed my camera, spent an hour taking the most beautiful sun-drenched photos of the interior. I wrote a glowing description, highlighting the new appliances, the walk-in shower, the private patio. I opened the Airbnb website. I created a listing. For the price, I typed in a number that was both absurd and defiant, $400 a night. Let them see that. Let them see what they were demanding I give away for free. I hit publish. I felt a grim satisfaction. It was a symbolic gesture. No one would actually book it at that price. It was just my way of digitally planting a flag in my own territory. But then, 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Airbnb. I opened it, my heart pounding. It was a booking request, not for a weekend. Someone had requested to book my guest house for the entire next month. My finger hovered over the accept button. This was it. This was the point of no return. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Accepting this booking felt like declaring war. Declining it felt like surrender. For 6 years, I had surrendered. I had worked extra hours to pay back the $2,000 for the car. I had hosted every family holiday because my apartment was more central. I had let my own needs shrink to make space for everyone else's. My father's voice echoed in my mind. Never let anyone treat your hard work like their personal piggy bank. My brother wasn't just asking for a place to stay. My mother was demanding I hand over the keys to my financial future. I pressed accept. The confirmation email arrived instantly. The guest's name was Richard. His profile picture showed a man in his early 30s, smiling, wearing a crisp button-down shirt. He was a management consultant in town for a month-long project with a local tech firm. His message was polite and professional. Looking forward to my stay. Your place looks beautiful and quiet, perfect for focusing on my work. My hands were still shaking, but a strange calm settled over me. I had a contract now. I had a paying guest. This wasn't an emotional family squabble anymore. It was a business transaction. Armed with this new reality, I called my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm just calling to let you know that you and Kyle don't need to worry about the guest house for him." There was a pause. "Oh, good," Martha said, relieved. "I knew you'd come to your senses. He'll be so happy." "No, that's not what I mean," I said, cutting her off. "I mean the guest house is no longer available. I rented it out. Someone booked it for the next month." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and cold. I could practically hear her processing the information, her pleasant motherly facade crumbling to reveal the anger beneath. "You did what?" she hissed. "Sarah, what is wrong with you? I told you your brother was coming on Friday." "And I told you I needed to rent it," I replied, my voice rising. "This is my house, my mortgage, my investment. I can't just give it away." "Give it away? It's your brother. This is family," she shrieked. I could hear Kyle's voice in the background, a low whine. "What's going on?" "You rented it to a stranger instead of helping your own blood," Martha continued, her voice dripping with accusation. "After everything we've done for you? You are the most selfish person I have ever known. What is Kyle supposed to do now?" "I don't know, Mom," I said, feeling a surge of frustration. "Maybe he could get a job and rent an apartment like a normal adult." She hung up on me. I stared at my phone, my whole body trembling. I had never stood up to her like that. A part of me felt sick with guilt, but a bigger part of me felt free. Richard arrived the next day, a day before Kyle was scheduled to appear. He pulled up in a clean, modest rental sedan, not a flashy sports car. He was exactly as his picture suggested, polite, put together, and professional. He carried a leather briefcase and one simple suitcase. "The place is even better in person," he said, looking around the small studio with genuine appreciation. "You did a fantastic job with the renovations, Sarah." I felt a blush of pride. "Thank you. I did it all myself." "That's impressive," he said with a warm smile. "Well, I'll be out of your hair. I have a lot of work to prep for. Thank you again for hosting me." He closed the door, and that was it. He was the perfect guest. Quiet, respectful, and most importantly, paying. The real storm arrived on Friday afternoon. My mother's car screeched into my driveway, followed by Kyle's beat-up hatchback, which was packed to the roof with his belongings. They got out of their cars and stared at the rental sedan parked near the garage. "What is this?" Martha demanded as I walked out to meet them. "That's my guest's car," I said calmly. Just then, the door to the guest house opened. Richard stepped out onto the patio, holding his phone to his ear. He was on a business call. He nodded politely at us before turning his back for privacy. Kyle's face was a mask of disbelief. "You weren't kidding," he said, his voice a pathetic whimper. "You actually rented it." "Yes, Kyle, I did," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "I can't believe you," Martha spat, her eyes blazing. "Look at him. Your brother is here with all his things, and you've given his room to some stranger." "It was never his room, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously low. "It was my rental property, and now it's occupied." Kyle threw his hands up in the air. "So what am I supposed to do? Just sleep in my car?" "You'll stay with us, of course," Martha said, glaring at me. She turned her fury back on me. "You've made your choice, Sarah. You chose money over family. Don't you dare come asking us for anything ever again. You'll regret this. You'll see." They got back in their cars and peeled out of my driveway, leaving a cloud of dust and the smell of burning rubber. I stood there, watching them go. I should have been devastated. But as I looked at my beautiful guest house, now occupied by a quiet, paying tenant, I didn't feel regret. I felt like I had finally bought back a piece of myself. The first week was strangely quiet. I braced myself for a storm of angry text messages and voicemails, but my phone remained silent. It was an unnerving peace, like the stillness in the air before a tornado. Richard was the perfect guest. I'd see him leave in the morning, briefcase in hand, and return in the evening. There were no parties, no loud music, just the quiet hum of someone working diligently. The money from his first week's stay appeared in my bank account, and seeing that number, a tangible result of my hard work, felt like a shield. It hardened my resolve. I spent my days working on my design projects, trying to push the family drama out of my head. But it lingered. Every time a car slowed down on my street, my heart would jump. During one of these quiet afternoons, I found myself staring at an old framed photo of my dad and me. He was showing me how to use a hammer, my small hand engulfed in his. He was a carpenter, a man who believed in building things to last. My father always used to say, "A foundation built on lies will always crumble." He was talking about wood and nails, but I knew he meant it for life too. My family's claim on my life, on my property, was a foundation of lies. The lie that my success was theirs to claim, that my hard work was just a resource for them to tap. The quiet broke on a Saturday morning. I was in my kitchen making coffee when I saw my mother's car pull into the driveway. My stomach twisted into a knot. She didn't get out right away. She just sat there staring at the guest house. Richard's rental car was gone. He had mentioned he'd be visiting a colleague for the day. Finally, her car door opened. She walked up to my front door, not with the fury of last week, but with a forced, brittle smile. She was holding a small Tupperware container. "I brought you some of your favorite lasagna," Martha said when I opened the door, her voice syrupy sweet. It was her classic move, the olive branch that was actually a weapon. "Thanks, Mom," I said, not moving to let her in. I took the container from her. It was still warm. "Well, aren't you going to invite me in?" she asked, her smile tightening at the edges. I sighed and stepped aside. "You can come in for a minute. I have a project deadline." She walked past me, her eyes immediately scanning my small house, as if looking for evidence of my supposed selfishness. Then her gaze drifted to the window that looked out onto the guest house. "So," she began, her voice casual, "how is your guest?" She said the word like it was something dirty. "He's fine. He's quiet and respectful," I answered, keeping my voice flat. "That's nice," she said. "It must be lonely for him, all by himself in a strange town. Maybe I should make him a lasagna too, a welcome to the neighborhood gesture." I saw it then. Her plan. She wanted to get to him, to tell him some sob story about her poor, homeless son, Kyle, and the cruel daughter who had cast him out. She would try to guilt-trip a complete stranger into leaving. "Don't," I said, my voice sharp. "You will not bother my tenant, Mom. He is here on business and he paid for privacy. You will not interfere." Her sweet facade vanished. "Interfere?" "I was just being neighborly. Something you clearly know nothing about. Your brother is sleeping on our couch, Sarah. A couch. His back hurts every morning. All because you'd rather take money from some stranger than help your own family." Kyle is sleeping on your couch because he's a 25-year-old man who refuses to get a job, I shot back. This has nothing to do with Richard. It has to do with you and Kyle expecting me to solve his problems. She shook her head, a look of profound disappointment on her face. It was a look she had perfected over the years, designed to make me feel an inch tall. I don't know what happened to you. You used to be such a caring person. This house, this money, it's made you hard. It's made you ugly on the inside. She turned and walked toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. You think this is over, don't you? You think you've won because you have a contract and a paying guest. She looked back at me, her eyes cold as ice. A rental agreement is just a piece of paper, Sarah. They can be broken. You should be careful. Sometimes foundations have cracks you can't see until it's too late. She walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, my heart pounding. Her words echoed in my ears. She wasn't just talking about a rental agreement. It was a threat. My mother was threatening to find a crack in the foundation of my new life and break it wide open. The peace I had felt was gone, replaced by a cold dread. This wasn't over. It had just begun. My mother's threat hung in the air long after she left. The lasagna sat on my counter, a peace offering that felt more like a Trojan horse. I ended up throwing it away, unable to shake the feeling that it was tainted with her malice. The next few days, I lived in a state of low-grade paranoia. I started double-checking the locks on my doors and the guest house. I installed a small security camera pointed at my driveway, something I'd been putting off for months. Now, it felt essential. My fears weren't unfounded. On Tuesday, while I was on a video call with a client, I saw her car drive slowly past my house. She didn't stop. She just cruised by, her head turned towards my property, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. It happened again on Wednesday. It was a clear message. I'm watching you. Richard remained an island of calm in my growing storm. He was barely there, a ghost who paid his rent on time. I felt a fierce need to protect his peace, not just because he was my tenant, but because his presence was my victory. He was the living proof that I had a right to my own life. On Friday, I was watering the small flower bed I'd planted in front of the guest house when my neighbor from across the street, a woman named Denise, came over. She was a notorious gossip, someone I usually avoided with a polite wave. That's a lovely little place you've built there, Sarah, she said, gesturing with her garden shears. Your mother was telling me all about it. I froze, my hand tightening on the hose. Oh, was she? Yes, Denise said, her eyes glinting with curiosity. She mentioned how proud she was that you were able to help your brother out with it. Such a sweet boy, your Kyle. It's so wonderful that he has a place to stay while he gets back on his feet. My blood ran cold. My mother wasn't just watching me. She was actively spreading a false narrative. She was painting me as the generous daughter and Kyle as the deserving brother, erasing the truth of the situation entirely. If Richard ever decided to leave early, the whole neighborhood would see me as the villain who kicked her own brother out. There must be a misunderstanding, Denise, I said, keeping my voice even. My brother is staying with my mother. I have a tenant in the guest house, a consultant from out of town. Denise's face fell, her gossipy delight turning into confusion. Oh, well, your mother made it sound like, well, never mind. She scurried back across the street, clearly flustered. The real attack came that evening. I was washing dishes when Richard knocked on my back door. It was the first time he'd initiated contact since he arrived. My heart leaped into my throat. Sorry to bother you, Sarah, he said, looking uncomfortable. I just had a strange encounter. What happened? I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. Your brother, I presume? A young man named Kyle? He was waiting for me by my car when I got back from work, Richard explained. He started telling me this very sad story about how he was supposed to be living here, how he had nowhere else to go, and how there had been a terrible mix-up. I closed my eyes. I am so sorry, Richard. You should not have to deal with this. It's all right, he said, holding up a hand. I've dealt with difficult negotiations before. I just told him that my rental agreement was with you, and any housing issues he had should be discussed with his family, not a temporary tenant. He seemed deflated. He asked if I could at least give him some money for a hotel. I was speechless, the sheer audacity of it. They had sent Kyle, my perpetually helpless brother, to beg a stranger for money on my property. It was a multi-pronged attack: harass the tenant, paint me as cruel, and try to get cash out of it. I told him no, of course, Richard continued calmly, but I thought you should be aware. It seems like there's a pressure campaign happening and I don't want it to affect my stay or your business. It won't, I said, my voice hard as steel. I will handle this. After he went back to the guest house, I stood in my kitchen, shaking with rage. This was no longer just about a place to live. This was about control. My mother and brother were trying to dismantle my life brick by brick because I had dared to build a wall around it. Her words came back to me. A rental agreement is just a piece of paper. They can be broken. She was trying to find a way to break it. She was testing the structure for cracks, sending Kyle to rattle the windows and spreading lies to weaken the support of the neighbors. She was looking for a way in, a flaw in my foundation she could exploit. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that she wouldn't stop until she found one. The rage was a hot coil in my stomach. It wasn't just anger at their entitlement. It was the cold, calculated nature of their attack. This was a siege. My mother, Martha, was the general, and my brother, Kyle, was her witless but willing soldier. They weren't just asking for a room. They were trying to break down my defenses, to prove that nothing I built was truly mine if they decided they wanted it. The next morning, I called in a favor. My old college roommate, Julia, had gone to law school. She wasn't a property lawyer, but she knew people who were. She gave me a name, Gregory. He was, in her words, an old shark who loves to eat bullies for breakfast. It was exactly what I needed. His office was in a modest building downtown, the kind with a slow clanking elevator and scuffed linoleum floors. Gregory himself was a man in his late 50s with a neat gray beard and eyes that didn't miss a thing. I explained the situation, my voice tight as I recounted my mother's words, Kyle's confrontation with Richard, and the whispers from my neighbor Denise. He listened without interruption, steepling his fingers on his large oak desk. When I finished, he nodded slowly. A classic emotional siege, with the goal of financial and residential capitulation, he said, his voice a calm rumble. Your mother is using your brother's perceived helplessness as a battering ram against your boundaries. Can they do anything? Legally? I asked, my hands twisting a paperclip into a mangled shape. The rental agreement with your tenant, Mr. Richard, is ironclad. I've reviewed the copy you sent. It's perfect, Gregory assured me. Their only angle is harassment. They hope to make life so uncomfortable for your tenant that he leaves, or so uncomfortable for you that you give in. So what do? You document everything, he said, leaning forward. Install security cameras. One pointing at the guest house entrance, one at your back door. Get a doorbell camera. Every time your brother shows up, you have a record. Every time your mother comes to your door to yell, you have a record. Save every text message, every voicemail. Create a paper trail so thick it could choke a horse. He paused. And you issue a formal notice. A notice? A cease and desist letter. From me, Gregory said with a thin smile. It informs them that any further unsolicited contact with you or your tenant will be considered harassment, and we will pursue legal action, including a restraining order. It's a warning shot. It tells them you have a lawyer and you're not playing their game anymore. I felt a wave of relief so powerful my shoulders sagged. Yes, let's do that. I left his office feeling stronger, armed. I spent the afternoon buying and installing 2 small, discreet security cameras. The simple act of screwing them into the wooden eaves of my house felt like reinforcing a fortress wall. Richard was supportive, agreeing to let me know the second he saw Kyle again. The letter from Gregory was sent by certified mail the next day. For 2 days, there was silence. A beautiful, peaceful silence. I started to hope that maybe the warning shot had been enough, that the sight of a law firm's letterhead had scared them off. I should have known better. On the 3rd evening, my mother showed up. She didn't knock. She just stood on my front porch, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold fury. I saw her on the new doorbell camera feed on my phone before I even heard a sound. I took a deep breath and opened the door. How dare you, Sarah, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Sending a lawyer after your own family, after your poor brother who has nothing. He has a place to live. With you, I said, my voice steady. I was proud of how calm I sounded. I told you, the guest house is rented. This is a business. A business? She scoffed, taking a step closer. You would put a stranger's money before your own blood? I raised you better than that. You raised me to be independent, I corrected her. And this is my home, my property. You and Kyle are not welcome here if you're going to harass me and my tenant. Her eyes narrowed into slits. That's where you're wrong. That guest house is family property. Your father, before he died, always said that garage would be for family, for emergencies. Well, this is an emergency. It was a lie, a complete fabrication. My father had never said anything of the sort. He'd hated that garage. That's not true, and you know it, I said. It is true, she insisted, her voice rising. And we have witnesses, people who heard him say it. Kyle has a right to be there. It's his ancestral home in a way. A lawyer's letter can't change that. We'll see you in court, Sarah. We'll sue you for his rightful place to live. I stared at her, dumbfounded. It was absurd, insane. But the conviction in her eyes told me she was serious. She would actually try to take me to court, to drain my savings and drag my name through the mud, all based on a lie she had just invented. She wasn't just rattling the windows anymore. She was trying to tear the whole house down. I stood there long after her car disappeared down the street, my hand still on the doorknob. The air on the porch was cool, but I felt hot with a rage so pure it was almost calming. Ancestral home? It was a garage. A dirty, crumbling garage that I, not my father, not my mother, and certainly not Kyle, had transformed. She wasn't just lying. She was trying to rewrite my entire life's effort, to steal the narrative of my hard work and claim it as some unearned family birthright. The lawsuit was a joke, but the threat wasn't. It was a declaration of war. The next morning, I was on the phone with Gregory before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. I explained everything my mother had said, every ridiculous claim, every threat. I expected him to laugh. He didn't. This is a classic tactic, Sarah, he said, his voice calm and professional. It's designed to intimidate you into giving up. The lawsuit itself is frivolous. There's no legal basis for a claim on your property based on a verbal, unproven statement allegedly made by your deceased father, especially when you are the sole owner on the deed. So we can just ignore it? I asked, a wave of relief washing over me. No, he said, and the relief vanished. We can't. If they file, we have to respond. It will be a drain on your time, your energy, and your money. That's the point. They want to make this so unpleasant for you that letting your brother live there for free seems like the easier option. My stomach twisted. So they can drag me through court over a lie? They can try, and it can get ugly. They'll request depositions. They'll try to paint you as a cruel, selfish daughter abandoning her family. The truth doesn't always matter as much as the story they can tell a judge. He paused. What we need to do is be prepared. And we need to give them a reason to back down before it gets that far. From now on, you document everything. Every call, every text, every unannounced visit. Do not engage with them alone. If they show up, you tell them to contact me. And most importantly, warn your tenant that they might be contacted. Tell her not to engage and to call you immediately if they approach her. His words were like a cold splash of water. This wasn't just a family fight anymore. It was a legal battle, and I needed to act like a soldier. I called my tenant, Julia, right away. She was a young nurse who worked odd hours at the local hospital. I hated dragging her into this. Hi, Julia, it's Sarah, your landlord, I started, trying to sound casual. I explained that I was having a small but complicated family dispute and that my relatives might try to contact her. I told her exactly what Gregory said. Don't engage, don't open the door, just call me. Oh, okay, she said, her voice hesitant. Is everything all right? Should I be worried? No, not at all, I lied, my heart sinking. It's just a precaution. They can be a bit dramatic. I'm so sorry to even mention it. 2 days passed in silence. I installed more security cameras, one pointing directly at the guest house entrance. I felt paranoid, checking the live feed on my phone every few minutes. Then, on the third afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Julia. She was whispering, and her voice was shaking. "Sarah, your brother is here," she said. Her words rushed. "He's knocking on the door. He won't leave. He's saying his mother sent him, that this is his house." "Stay inside, Julia. Do not open the door. I'm on my way. I'm 5 minutes away," I said, grabbing my keys. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I pressed the record button on my phone's voice memo app and slid it into my shirt pocket. "Document everything," Gregory had said. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw him. Kyle was sitting on the steps of the guest house, looking at his phone as if he owned the place. He looked up as I slammed my car door. "What are you doing here, Kyle?" I asked, walking toward him. I kept my voice level, just as I'd practiced in my head. "Mom said to come get the keys," he said with a shrug, not even bothering to stand up. "Said you'd finally come to your senses." "The guest house is occupied by a tenant and you are trespassing," I said, using the exact words Gregory had taught me. "I need you to leave the property now," he scoffed. "It's not trespassing if it's family property. Dad always said I could have this place if I needed it." There it was, the lie, repeated so casually. "That's interesting," I said, stopping a few feet from him. "Because I have Dad's journals, all of them, and in his entry from May 12th, 6 months before he passed, he wrote about this garage. He wrote, 'That old garage is an eyesore. I hope one day Sarah tears it down and builds something beautiful for herself, something that's all hers.'" Kyle's face went pale. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. He knew I was telling the truth. He knew the journals existed. And in that moment, he also knew that I had just called his bluff in the most definitive way possible. He had walked right into my trap, and the little red recording icon on my phone had captured every single word. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves of the oak tree in my front yard. Kyle just sat there, frozen on the steps, the smug confidence completely drained from his face. He looked like a child who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, a mix of shock and indignation. He was supposed to move in, but I turned my garage into a guest house instead. "What would you do in my place? Comment what you think and share this story." "You're lying," he finally stammered, but the words had no force behind them. They were hollow. "Am I?" I held his gaze. "Do you want me to go inside and get the journal, Kyle? We can read it together. We can even call Mom and read it to her over the phone." He scrambled to his feet, his face turning a blotchy red. "You're crazy, Sarah. You've always been jealous." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "Mom is going to hear about this. You're tearing this family apart over a stupid shed." "It's not a shed, it's a legal dwelling with a tenant," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "And you are still trespassing. I'm asking you one last time to leave before I call the police." The word police finally did it. He flinched. He gave the guest house one last hateful glare, then looked at me. "This isn't over," he spat before turning and stomping toward the sidewalk. He didn't even have a car here. He must have taken the bus, expecting me to just hand over the keys and let him move in. I watched until he was out of sight, then let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hand went to my pocket, and I felt the reassuring warmth of my phone. I stopped the recording. Inside the guest house, the curtain moved slightly. I gave a small nod to let Julia know it was safe. My first call was to Gregory. I didn't even say hello. "I got it," I said. "I got him on tape admitting he was here because Mom sent him, and I got his threats. I also got him reacting to Dad's journal entry." "Good work, Sarah." Gregory's voice was calm and professional. "Email the file to me immediately. Do not delete it from your phone. From this point on, do not engage with your brother at all. If he comes back, you call 911. No warnings." "What about my mother?" I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. "That's the next phase," he said. "She's going to call you. Let it go to voicemail the first time. Let's hear what her opening move is. Then call me back." I followed his instructions precisely. I emailed him the audio file and then went inside my own house, my hands still shaking. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone lit up with our mother's name, Martha. Just as Gregory predicted. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button, but I forced myself to let it ring. It went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. I took a deep breath and played the message. "Sarah, it's your mother." Her voice was tight with a forced, syrupy sweetness that always preceded an attack. "Your brother just called me, very upset. I don't know what lies you told him, but you have hurt him deeply. You are being so selfish. After everything we have done for you, call me back immediately. We need to sort this out as a family." I called Gregory. He listened as I recounted the message. "Predictable," he said. "She's using guilt and framing you as the aggressor. Now you're going to call her back. Stick to the script. Be polite, be firm, and do not let her draw you into an emotional argument. Ready?" "Ready," I said, though I felt sick. I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Sarah, finally. What is this nonsense about you threatening your brother with the police?" "Hello, Mom," I said, keeping my voice even. "I didn't threaten Kyle. I informed him that he was trespassing on private property and that if he refused to leave, I would have to involve law enforcement. There's a difference." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Private property? That guest house was built with family money. Your father would be ashamed of you, hoarding your resources like this, when your own brother needs help." "That's not true. And you know it," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I paid for every nail and every can of paint in that house with money I earned myself. Dad's journal says he wanted me to build something for myself. Something that was all mine." Silence. She hadn't expected me to bring up the journal. She was probably the one who told Kyle to use that lie in the first place. When she spoke again, all the fake sweetness was gone. Her voice was cold, like ice. "You know, I was looking over some old bank statements the other day, Sarah, from about 6 years ago. I seem to recall giving you $10,000 to help with a down payment on that house. I was happy to do it then, as a gift. But seeing as you're no longer interested in being part of this family, I think it's fair to consider that a loan. A loan that I am now officially calling due. I want my $10,000, with interest. You have 30 days. The line went dead. I stood frozen in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the empty hiss of the dial tone. $10,000. With interest. 30 days. The numbers echoed in the sudden silence, each one a hammer blow against the fragile walls of security I had so carefully built around myself. My mother's voice, stripped of all warmth and turned into a weapon, was a poison seeping into my veins. She knew. Of course, she knew. She knew that my savings were gone, poured into the guest house. She knew I was living project to project. 30 days was an impossible timeline. It wasn't a request for repayment. It was an eviction notice for my dreams. My breath hitched, and for a second the room tilted. This was her masterstroke. She couldn't win the argument on morality or family loyalty, so she had gone for the jugular, my finances. She was trying to bleed me out to make keeping the guest house so painful, so costly, that I would have no choice but to surrender it to Kyle. I sank into a kitchen chair, my head in my hands. The beautiful sunlight from the guest house skylight no longer felt warm. It felt mocking. After a few minutes of numb panic, Gregory's voice cut through the noise in my head. "She's going to find your weakest point and press down until something breaks." His words from our first call came back to me. This was it. This was the pressure. But I wasn't going to break. Not yet. I picked up my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed Gregory's number again. He answered immediately, as if he'd been waiting. "Let me guess," he said, his voice calm and steady. She pulled out a financial knife. "A $10,000 one," I choked out, explaining the demand, the 30-day deadline, the loan that had always been a gift. He was quiet for a moment, and I could picture him in his office, leaning back in his chair, piecing it all together. "Okay, Sarah, this is good." "Good?" I asked, my voice rising. "Gregory, I don't have that kind of money. I barely have $1,000 in savings right now. It's good because it's a desperate, clumsy move," he explained patiently. "And it's based on a lie we can prove. Think back, Sarah, 6 years ago. How did she give you the money? Was it cash, a wire transfer, a check?" I closed my eyes, trying to force my way through the fog of memory. 6 years felt like a lifetime ago. I was just starting out, terrified of taking on a mortgage. "A check," I said finally. It was a check. It was for my 22nd birthday. She put it inside a card. A smile bloomed in Gregory's voice. "A card? Excellent. And do you, by any chance, still have that card?" My heart sank. I don't know. I keep some sentimental things, but I've moved twice since then. It could be anywhere." "Then it's time for a treasure hunt," he said. "Go through everything. Old boxes, photo albums, files. Look for anything from that time. Bank statements showing the deposit, any emails or letters mentioning it. Her entire claim rests on the idea that this was a formal loan. If you find a birthday card that says, 'Happy birthday, here's a gift,' her case evaporates. Call me the second you find anything." Hanging up, I felt a tiny spark of purpose ignite within me. He was right. It was a hunt. My entire future depended on finding a single piece of paper. I went straight to the hall closet where I kept 2 large plastic tubs labeled memories. They were filled with a disorganized jumble of my life before this house. Old college notebooks, photographs, letters from friends, and tax documents. I dragged the tubs into the living room and dumped them out onto the floor. For the next 2 hours, I sat in a sea of my own past, sifting through papers. I found old report cards, concert ticket stubs, and a stack of photos from a trip I took in college. Underneath a pile of old tax returns, I found it. A small cedar box where I kept my most important keepsakes. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were a few of my father's old tie clips, a pressed flower, and a small stack of cards tied with a faded ribbon. I carefully untied it. There were cards from my grandparents, my friends, and then I saw it. A pale blue envelope with my name written in my mother's perfect looping cursive. I slid the card out. On the front was a picture of a little house with a garden. My breath caught in my throat. I opened it. Inside, her handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Sarah, happy 22nd birthday. I am so incredibly proud of the woman you are becoming. Your father always knew you would build something beautiful for yourself, and we want to help you lay the first brick. Please accept this little gift to help you on your way to your first home. All our love, Mom." The word was right there, circled in the light from the window. Gift. Not loan. Gift. Tucked into the fold of the card was the carbon copy of the check. $10,000. Memo. Birthday gift. A wave of something fierce and hot washed over me. It was a mix of relief, rage, and a profound sadness. She hadn't just lied. She had tried to corrupt one of the last pure, happy memories I had of her support. She was willing to twist a birthday present into a weapon to hurt me. I took a clear photo of the card, the handwritten message, and the check copy. I sent it to Gregory with a simple message. "I found it." His reply came in less than a minute. It wasn't a text message. It was a phone call. "Sarah." Gregory's voice was sharp, energized. "This is perfect. It's more than perfect. The check copy with the memo line? That's the nail in the coffin. She has absolutely no case." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "So it's over?" "Not quite," he said, and I could almost hear him smiling. "Now the fun part begins. I'm drafting a letter to your mother right now. It will inform her that any further contact, threats, or attempts to claim your property will be met with a harassment lawsuit. I'm attaching a high-resolution copy of this gift. She should have it by tomorrow morning. Don't answer any calls from her. Let her stew in it." I agreed, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I spent the rest of the day cleaning my house, not just tidying up, but deep cleaning, as if I could scrub away the grime of the whole ordeal. I put my past back into its plastic tubs and shoved them back into the closet. I was moving forward. The next day passed in a strange, tense silence. I kept checking my phone, but there were no calls from my mother, Martha, no angry texts, nothing. I started to wonder if Gregory's letter had been enough to make her back down for good. A part of me, a naive, hopeful part, thought maybe she saw the card and felt a flicker of shame. That hope was shattered at 10 p.m. My phone rang, and the caller ID was unknown. I knew it was her. Against Gregory's advice, I answered. For a moment, there was only the sound of her breathing, sharp and ragged. Then her voice came low and venomous. How could you, Sarah? How could I what? I asked, my voice steady. How could I find a birthday card you sent me? You're trying to humiliate me, she hissed, turning my own son against me, making me look like a liar. You are a liar, I said, the words tasting like metal. You lied to me, you lied to Kyle, and you lied to a lawyer. You tried to steal my home. Steal! She shrieked, her voice rising. I gave you the money for that house. That money was for family, for your brother. Kyle has nothing, Sarah. He's struggling, and you're sitting there in your pretty little house with your extra little cottage, hoarding it all for yourself. You are the most selfish person I have ever known. The accusation hit me like a slap. All those years of saving, of working late nights, of sacrificing vacations and dinners out, all of it erased by her narrative that I was just lucky, that I owed my success to her. That money was a gift, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You wrote it yourself, and this house, this guest house, I built with my own 2 hands. Every floorboard, every coat of paint. It's mine. You are not entitled to it. Kyle is not entitled to it. We'll see about that, she spat, and the line went dead. I stood in my dark living room, trembling with rage. The idea that she could twist my hard work into an act of selfishness was staggering. My father always said, a lie can sprint, but the truth runs a marathon. It always wins in the end. I clung to that thought like a life raft. She could sprint all she wanted. I had the truth on my side. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite tap, but a hard, insistent banging. My heart jumped into my throat. I crept to the peephole and looked out. It was my brother, Kyle. His face was pale in the porch light, his expression a calculated mask of concern. He looked like the victim, the worried brother. I knew better. I opened the door just a crack, leaving the chain on. Sarah, he said, his voice soft and placating. Can I come in? We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Kyle, I said, my voice firm. Please. He pushed gently on the door. Mom is a mess. You know how she gets. She's not thinking straight. She just wants to make sure I'm okay. And you're okay with her lying to do it? I challenged. You knew it was a gift, didn't you? You knew, and you went along with her plan to sue me. He had the decency to look away for a second. It's complicated, Sarah. You have so much. A house, the guest house rental. I have nothing. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. All she wants is for you to share a little bit. Just for a little while, until I get back on my feet. Is that so much to ask? The sheer entitlement in his voice was breathtaking. He wasn't asking. He was telling me what I owed him. He saw my life's work not as something I had earned, but as a resource he was being unfairly denied. It's not yours to ask for, I said. I started to close the door. His hand shot out, grabbing the edge of the door, stopping it from closing. His friendly mask dropped, and for a second, I saw the same ugly greed that was in my mother's voice. Don't be like this, Sarah, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. You owe us. The words, you owe us, hung in the air, thick and poisonous. For a terrifying second, I was a child again, frozen by my older brother's anger. But then I felt the solid wood of the door under my hand, the door I had sanded and painted myself. I felt the floorboards I had laid beneath my feet. This was my house. I had built this. The fear curdled into a white-hot rage. I didn't think. I acted. With a yell that tore from my throat, I threw my entire body weight against the door. Kyle, caught off guard and only expecting passive resistance, yelped as the heavy door slammed shut on his fingers. I heard a sickening crack and a string of curses. I fumbled with the deadbolt, my hands shaking, and shot it home. Then I leaned my back against the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Sarah, you witch! He screamed from the other side, his voice distorted with pain and fury. You broke my hand. I'll sue you for everything you have. Mom was right about you. I stayed silent, listening to his footsteps stomp down the porch stairs and then the sound of his car peeling away from the curb. Only then did I slide down to the floor, my legs giving out from under me. The adrenaline left me trembling, cold sweat trickling down my spine. They were going to sue me, my own mother and brother. They weren't just trying to bully me into giving up the guest house. They were willing to destroy me in court to get it. The beautiful sage green walls of my hallway suddenly felt like they were closing in. Every piece of furniture I had so lovingly restored, every fixture I had installed, felt tainted. This wasn't just about a guest house anymore. It was about my life, my work, my sanity. I knew I couldn't fight this alone. The next morning, I found myself sitting in a worn leather armchair that smelled of old books and polish. I had looked up the best property lawyer in the city, a man named Richard, whose reviews described him as a bulldog. He was an older man with sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He listened patiently as I recounted the entire story, from my dream of the guest house to Kyle's hand in my door. I left nothing out, including the fact that the money from my mother had come with no written contract. When I finished, Richard steepled his fingers and looked at me over his glasses. His expression was serious, unreadable. "Well, Sarah," he said, his voice calm and measured, "you're in what we call a sticky situation. Verbal agreements are messy. Your mother, Martha, will claim the $100,000 was a loan for the renovation, a loan you are now refusing to repay by denying her son Kyle access to the property." "But it wasn't a loan," I insisted, my voice cracking. "It was a gift. She said so. She said she was proud of me for buying my own place and wanted to help me build my future." "I believe you," he said, and the simple words almost made me cry. However, a judge doesn't operate on belief. A judge operates on evidence. The burden of proof here is tricky. She will say loan, you will say gift. It becomes a he said, she said scenario, and in family disputes, judges often lean towards solutions that seem fair, which could mean forcing a sale of the property to repay the loan. My blood ran cold. Sell my house? "It's a worst-case scenario, but it's a possibility we must prepare for," Richard said. "What we need is proof of her intent at the time the money was given. Did she send you any emails, text messages, a letter, anything at all that uses the word gift or language that implies it wasn't a loan?" I racked my brain, trying to sift through years of conversations. My mother wasn't a big texter, and our emails were usually just short notes. Nothing came to mind. My stomach sank. "I don't think so. It was always just said, in conversation." "Think harder," Richard urged gently. "Birthdays, holidays, was the money given around a specific occasion?" My mind flashed. An occasion. The money hadn't been random. She'd transferred it the week of my 25th birthday. I remembered being so overwhelmed, calling her to thank her. And then, a few days later, a card had arrived in the mail. I almost never saved cards, but this one had felt different. It was a milestone. "My 25th birthday," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She gave me a card. Richard leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "And what did it say?" I closed my eyes, trying to picture the loopy, dramatic handwriting. Something like, "Happy quarter century. So proud of the woman you've become. Here's a little something to help you build your beautiful dream house. Consider it a gift from a proud mother." Something like that. A slow smile spread across Richard's face. "Sarah, where is that card?" I think I know," I stammered, a frantic hope blooming in my chest. "I have a memory box in my closet. Old photos, letters. I think it's in there." "Go home," he said, his voice firm and clear. "Find that card. Don't call your mother. Don't speak to your brother. Find that card and bring it directly to me." A handwritten note calling it a gift is exactly the kind of evidence that can blow their entire case out of the water. I drove home, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, praying that a piece of faded cardstock held the key to my entire future. The drive home was a blur of red lights and the blare of other people's horns. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. Every worst-case scenario played out in my head. What if I'd thrown the card away in one of my cleaning sprees? What if I'd imagined the whole thing, my memory creating a fantasy to save me? Richard's voice echoed in my ears. "Find that card." It was more than advice. It was a command, a lifeline. I fumbled with my keys at the front door, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get it open. I didn't even bother to close it behind me. I ran straight to my bedroom closet, the smell of cedar and old memories hitting me as I pulled the doors open. On the top shelf, tucked behind a stack of winter sweaters, was a simple wooden box. My memory box. I pulled it down, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. I sat on the floor, my legs crossed, and lifted the lid. The contents of my life stared back at me. A faded photo of me and my dad at a baseball game, his arm around my shoulder. Ticket stubs from my first concert. A dried corsage from a high school dance. Each item was a ghost, a reminder of a simpler time before everything became a transaction, a battle. My fingers trembled as I sifted through the layers of paper. Old letters from college friends, postcards from trips I'd taken, birthday cards from years past. There were dozens of them. I pulled them out one by one, my breathing shallow. Happy 21st, happy 22nd, a goofy cartoon dog on my 23rd. My hope started to fray with each card that wasn't the right one. Maybe Richard was wrong, maybe I was wrong. Maybe my mother had been planning this betrayal for years, carefully avoiding any written proof of her supposed generosity. Then I saw it. It was underneath a photograph of my graduation. The card was simple, elegant, with a watercolor painting of a small, charming house on the front. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered it instantly. I had loved it because it looked so much like the dream I had in my head. With a hand that felt disconnected from my body, I lifted it from the box. It felt heavy, impossibly important. I opened it slowly. There, on the right-hand side, was my mother's familiar looping script, written in a fancy blue ink pen. To my dearest Sarah, on your quarter century. I am so incredibly proud of the strong, independent woman you have become. Watching you chase your dreams with such passion is a joy. Here is a little something to help you build that beautiful dream house you've always wanted. Consider it a gift, with all my love, from a very proud mother. A gift. The word was right there, clear as day. Consider it a gift. Not a loan, not an investment. A gift. I read it again, and then a third time, the words burning themselves into my memory. A sound escaped my lips, a choked sob of pure, unadulterated relief. It was real. I wasn't crazy. The truth was right here, in my hands, written in my own mother's handwriting. This piece of thick, embossed cardstock was my shield, my sword, my declaration of independence. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers still clumsy. I dialed Richard's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Sarah, any luck?" he asked, his voice tight with anticipation. "I found it," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm holding it right now." "Read it to me," he said, his tone all business. Every single word. I took a deep, shuddering breath and read the inscription out loud. When I finished, there was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the gears turning in his mind. Then, he let out a low whistle. "That's it," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "That's the silver bullet. Consider it a gift." She signed it? Yes. With all my love, from a very proud mother. "Perfect," Richard said, his voice now brimming with energy. "Absolutely perfect. Photograph it right now from every angle. Email me the pictures. Then put that card in a plastic sleeve and bring it to my office first thing in the morning. Do not let it out of your sight." "What happens now?" I asked, clutching the card to my chest. "Now," Richard said, and his voice was cold, sharp, and wonderful. "We stop playing defense. Tomorrow we go on the attack. We're going to file a countersuit for harassment and emotional distress. And we're going to schedule a deposition with Martha and your brother Kyle. It's time they answered some questions under oath." Hanging up the phone, I looked at the card one more time. My mother had given me a gift to build a dream, and then tried to turn that dream into a cage. But in her arrogance, she'd left behind the key. And I was about to use it to lock her out of my life for good. The fear that had been living in my stomach for weeks was gone. In its place, something new was growing. Something hard and clear and ready for a fight. The deposition took place in a soulless conference room with beige walls and a long, polished table that reflected the harsh fluorescent lights. I sat next to Richard, my hands folded calmly on the table. Across from us, my mother Martha and brother Kyle sat with their lawyer, a man with a permanently worried expression. Kyle was trying to look bored, tapping his pen on a legal pad. Martha wore an expensive silk blouse and a look of supreme confidence, as if this was all just a minor inconvenience. Their lawyer started with a long, rambling statement about family obligations and my mother's generosity. I just watched them, feeling strangely detached. The fear was gone. Richard let him finish, then leaned forward slightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet but carrying across the table. "We have just one piece of evidence to present today." He slid a clear plastic sleeve across the polished wood. It stopped directly in front of Martha. Inside was the greeting card. She glanced at it, a flicker of confusion on her face. Then her eyes widened. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her foundation looking like a pale mask. "What is this?" she snapped, but her voice was a little too high. "It appears to be a card from you to your daughter, Sarah," Richard said smoothly. "Dated May 14th of last year. Perhaps you could read the inscription aloud for the record?" Martha stared at the card, her mouth opening and closing silently. Kyle leaned over to look, and I saw the moment he understood. His confident posture collapsed. He slumped in his chair, the pen falling from his fingers. I don't remember this," Martha stammered. "You don't remember congratulating your daughter on finishing the guest house?" Richard pressed. "You don't remember writing, and I quote, 'I'm so incredibly proud of what you've built. Consider it a gift, a foundation for your future.'" The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Martha's lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He was seeing the card for the first time, I realized. She hadn't even told him. "This is taken out of context," Martha said, her voice trembling with rage. "She manipulated me." "Did she manipulate your handwriting?" Richard asked, his tone icy. "Did she manipulate you into signing it, 'with all my love, from a very proud mother'?" Martha stared at me, her eyes filled with a venom that no longer scared me. It just made me feel tired. She had built our entire relationship on a lie, and now her own words had torn it down. Kyle wouldn't even look at me. He was staring at his hands, a boy who had followed his mother into a battle he couldn't win. The deposition ended 10 minutes later. Their lawyer asked for a recess and practically dragged them out of the room. That evening, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but I knew I had to, just once more. Her voice was no longer commanding. It was pleading, then angry. "How could you do this to your own family, Sarah, after everything I've done for you? You gave me a gift, and then you tried to take it back and my home along with it," I said calmly. "This isn't about family. This is about you needing to control me. It's over." "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll be all alone." "I'd rather be alone than be in your debt," I said, and I hung up. 2 days later, Richard called. They had dropped the lawsuit. They also agreed to pay all my legal fees and signed a restraining order, legally binding them to never contact me or set foot on my property again. The countersuit for harassment had worked perfectly. It was done. Truly done. The following Saturday, I was in the guest house. The sunlight was streaming through the skylight, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I had a new booking, a young couple coming for the weekend. I was changing the sheets, plumping the pillows, making everything perfect. My phone buzzed with a notification. The first rental payment had been deposited into my account. I stood in the middle of the room, looking at the smooth laminate floors I had laid, the sage green walls I had painted, the sturdy little structure I had built from nothing. My father, a carpenter, always said you can't build a straight house on a crooked foundation. For so long, my mother had been my foundation, and it had been crooked, built on conditions and control. Now, standing here, in this space that was completely and utterly mine, I finally felt stable. I had built this place, and in doing so, I had built a new foundation for myself, one made of my own strength, my own work, and the simple, undeniable truth. And it was strong enough to hold any future I wanted to build upon it. From a crumbling garage to a thriving rental, I built my own stability. They dropped the lawsuit and paid me. My own strength is my foundation now. What did you think of my fight for independence? Subscribe for more stories of building a better life.